Okay, thank you so much for joining, Winfried. I can call you Winfried, right?
Definitely. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for accepting our invite on Let's Talk About Data. And we have been meeting a lot of people on a weekly basis, and I think we have booked our session a couple of quarters back, right? And hope it was not. It's not in the middle of your day. I think it is in the middle of your day, right?
It is my lunchtime. Yeah. I promise I will not eat during it.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, pleasure, pleasure. So, floor is all yours. Our audience never met you before. So, introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Winfried. I'm German born. I've been living in Norway for the last 20 years. And um, I work with data and data governance on a daily basis in a company, but I also do a lot of that work in my, wouldn't call it free time anymore. I call it free time, my wife doesn't. Um, but in my free time, I have my own company. I do data management trainings. I'm a certified data management master at with DAMA, so DAMA education provider. I do my own training sessions as well on data governance mainly. And all that led me to writing a book about the topic. And that book has been in progress for a couple of years because I really didn't want to write yet another book on a new framework or a new process or a new model that you should apply because I feel like I've seen those come and go throughout the years, but I never seen anything that really profoundly impacted the way I worked. Um, so that was my idea, and that's obviously an idea that requires a lot of work. And I had a partner. This is a bit of the sad part of the story here. I had a partner to start with, Jason Hare, and we did had some. We had weekly meetings together and talked about data governance and had that idea of writing the book together. Then sadly, Jason passed away, and I started all fresh again, trying to see what is it that not influenced by Jason, but what is my idea that I want to bring forward. And luckily, I had Joe Reese as a partner in crime here, and he's helping me on the way, also with publishing my book and getting it out. So yeah, the book is very much a book about data governance as a capability or a discipline. Um, Trying to look at it from a first principle perspective. All right, what is it we are actually doing, and why are we doing it? Not the how. Not the, oh, let's implement yet another data catalog or let's write yet another policy. Because that's not really what data governance is about, right? Trying to
Mm.
understand why are we doing it in the first place and moving from there. Now I feel like I'm diving into the book already, but you probably have some questions before that.
Yeah, that's perfect, right? I also ended up writing five books. So, first one was the difficult one. It took me around 3 years to complete the first one, and next 2 years I took for four books. So yes, first one is always a challenging one.
Yeah.
You're just newborn baby. It's a new thing. You're afraid of a lot of things. Once you publish first one, you think it's just a piece of cake. Then you keep writing, keep writing. That's a
That
hard.
what that's what my wife is afraid of. Um, Yeah. So yeah, first one is probably you're absolutely right, and you exploring the process as you go,
Yeah.
and at the same time you also deal with a lot of inferior issues, and you feel like
Yes, yes.
why is it me writing this book? Yeah.
Actually, the difficult part to publish a book is the process. It's not writing. Well, chat I make it a little bit easier. Like you don't have to have a proofreader, the grammar mistakes, context. paragraphs matching to each. So all these things has been handled by AI now. So that process has been, you know, shortened now. But still, uh, publishing a book, if you're going via a publisher, is still a pain in the ass, right? If you publish yourself. The first one I went through a publisher, but next four I published myself. So things are much easier for me. Okay, I think this data governance, right? Okay, before we go into details, right, tell us about your background. Like, as you correctly you mentioned that you have been in data governance from day one. How you started your education was IT or a customer end or a vendor end, or you
No,
where
no,
you
no.
were because because I'm in data industry, right? I think the whole data ecosystem has two pieces. One, if you're on the this side of the table or the other side of the table, either you're a customer or you're a vendor, it's totally different game. So tell us about that angle where you are. Then I'm a solution architect. I will ask 100 questions from you.
Good. Yeah, I would say I started off the scale. My academic background is in history, political science, and law. So I have no data background from uni. And I slided into that topic by accident, I guess. I worked for a small consultancy in Norway, and we looked at archives. We looked at what data that has been archived, what needs to be kept for how long, how do you retain your data, and how do you make it even possible to keep data for a longer time. So that's where I started, and then I looked into the information part first, right? Information management, information governance. And then I realized that I'm I'm very much working at the wrong end of the life cycle. I'm working at the end of the life cycle when every decision has already been made. Um, but you need to move. Don't want to call it shift left, but you need to move to where data is created or where data enters your system to really make the good decisions that are lasting. And then I moved into data governance. Worked for as a consultant for many years in that field, and then moved in-house afterwards as a discipline expert, as a manager, managing a team of data operations, data science team. Um, did also manage a data platform and pipeline team, and then moved into data governance as a manager, and now again as a subject matter expert. And I kind of stayed in, I would say, well, three different industries. When I started my working career, it was very much on the retail side. Then I moved into public services. We talked about the archives, and then, well, maybe due to where I live in the west coast of Norway, I moved into oil and gas, and this is where I got stuck. Not because it's the only thing you can do here, but very much because it is so interesting and so many aspects of the data work are affected, and you can actually make a good chunk of a difference on people's daily life with data, which is really interesting.
Yeah, so I'm also in data industry for uh, oil and gas in last 4 5 years actually. I also work in many domains: banking, telco, Department of Corrections, retail, insurance, and in last 4 years, 5 years in oil and gas. I was with Petronas. It's one of the biggest, actually, it is the biggest oil and gas in Malaysia.
Hmm.
So great. So it means you have touch-based multiple domains. So you've been at a customer end or you've been at a consultant end?
Yeah, I've been on the consultant end, and now I'm in the customer end. So
Yeah,
I'm in-house now. Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Hmm.
But
And that,
my,
there's a reason for it. One reason in particular, because I worked as a consultant for many years, and there was one thing that always bothered me, and that is that the responsibility you get at the customer side is always limited, and there's always at a certain point there comes a handover, at a certain point you move on, and that's fun. right? You get new challenges, you get new ideas, you get new companies. But there's always that feeling that I could have done more if I would just have had the right level of responsibility or the right level of insight or the right level of access that I wouldn't get as a consultant. So that made the move in-house for me so tangible and so important. And now I am in-house, and now I got that responsibility, and it makes all the difference.
You're absolutely right because I spent my most of my career, like around 15 years in consultancy. I'm in Oracle, I work with Oracle, IBM, Teradata, I work with Satyam, HCL. So all these consultancies I work with. In last 7 years, I've been the customer and I work with banking, this side of the table where you are right now, and same in oil and gas in-house. So yes, it's a totally different beast because once you are at a customer end, and if you are very much good with the technology you're working on, then you always find on the other side people are not understanding you. They are not risk takers, right? They are
Mm.
stuck in their organization level processes, the risks, all those things. Consulting will have never have those visibility. So you're always saying, hey, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And they keep saying no. But the moment you come on the other side of the table, then you realize, hey, there are many things you have to follow. There are compliance, there's
Mm.
audit, regulatory bodies, all those things are there, right? Which are very important. So with this regulatory, let's go towards governance. We all know that basic governance or data governance, the start is regulatory bodies, policies, and standards, right? I feel that's a wrong way to take it. Governance, you are the expert. I'll take advice from you because in last couple of decades, it was always centralized approach, single one team managing everything. And they say, hey, why we need data governance? Because we need to get compliance reports to the regulatory bodies, right? That is like how it all started. But for me, data governance is bigger than that. Data governance is govern everything. When we say everything, for me, mostly metadata, and metadata includes everything. Normally, people think about technical metadata, column names, description, that's all. You know, for me, governance is mostly is business metadata, where you have all those data modeling techniques, ontologies, taxonomies, FCO model. You really understand that business. That has to be translated into technical. So for me, that is governance, right? So tell us, walk us
Yeah.
through the data governance from scratch. And we have now next 45 minutes. I will go from traditional data governance. I will go towards this federated approach of agentic AI, where governance has become a difficult right now, but utmost important now. Let's start with the traditional data. Floor is all yours.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot to cover here, and you
Yeah.
you already mentioned a whole lot of important points. I think when we look at how data governance is done in most organizations, it is a technical discipline, as you said. Um, but that's not really what it is about. And then we move away from why are we doing data governance in the first place to how can we do it? Um, and I think of data governance as a socio-technical capability, right? There is a technical element to it, obviously, but it's very much something that keeps your organization is that aligned with regulations. That's just only one part of it, right? It keeps the organization floating. And in the book, I deliberately chose to redefine data governance. Um, Not from all these perspectives that we talked about in the beginning, from because there are definitions that are very much process focused, or definitions that are technology focused, or definitions that are focused on roles and responsibilities. I try to um, look at from a first principle perspective, right? What is it really about? And it's about governance. So let's talk about the governance part and not the data part first.
Yeah.
Um, Data governance is a subcategory of governance in the organization. And if you think of how governance is done in an organization, if you think of risk governance, if you think of IT governance, if you think of corporate governance, there is a very specific role that plays in the organization. And that has been the basis for my definition. So my definition is data governance is a human-based system. There's a reason for human-based. We can come back to that. But a human-based system by which data assets in the socio-technical system are directed, overseen, and by which the organization is held accountable for achieving their defined purpose. So there are three things, right? Direction, accountability, and a defined purpose. So the defined purpose is the business value, business need, regulatory constraints, right? The market demand that we are seeing. Those need to be negotiated. And I think that's something that we classically have not been that good at, because the way we do these negotiations are very much fragmented. If you think of conceptual data modeling, that's very much the ideal way of organizing that, right? Organizing all these needs and constraints into a model and then translating it to data. That's one part. And direction, that's about data strategy. Where are we going? Not just doing everything based on the next quick win, but very much having a certain endurance and stamina to see where should we go with the company when it comes to data. And then the last one is accountability. And that has been maybe the biggest of these topics lately, when we talk about digital sovereignty, when we talk about who actually owns the data, who's responsible for it, and who ultimately stays accountable for that we are achieving our purpose with data. And so that's it. These are the three core ideas, right?
Yeah.
I call them the data governance triad: the data negotiation, data direction, and data audit. Audit is about accountability. Audit is about assurance. Audit is not something that you do after the fact, right? It's something that you do
Yeah.
continuously through observability, for example, to monitoring. But yeah, that's the core idea, and that's the idea that I found is always present in data governance. These are the three elements you always need to do. And it doesn't mean that you have three people that each do something here, but it's very much these foundational, enduring responsibilities that you are taking on. And these are very much aligned with how you do corporate governance, for example, when you set your business strategy, when you set your internal audit structure through the CFO office, right? The controlling. This is aligned with how you negotiate your market demands for your organization at a corporate level. So it's very much a concept that understands what governance is, what governance really is about, and then trying to translate it to our data reality.
Okay. So I think the most critical part for me is accountability. I think that is where the most of the failures start coming in. Because first 2 years is a given thing. When you talk about accountability for last few decades, since yes, OLTP applications, it was always sorted out. The honor was always there. Their applications, OLTP means front-end applications are running. If it is SAP or Oracle or whatever, yes, accountable person is there. But the moment you dig out data from there, put it into the OLAP system, when you start creating big data warehouses or data lake or data map, that is where accountability start dying, right? Because it is not something, if someone shut down, business stops, business will not stop, business will still running, right? And that is where accountability. Now the question is, let's talk about first centralized approach where we are talking about big data warehouses, right? Villain Mon or Star Schema, whatever it is. If there was a big data warehouse with all the subject areas, which can be marketing, sales, product, customer, procurement, anything, right? Now, when it comes to accountability, there was always one team who was doing data management, pipelining, blah, 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 blah. They were managing operations, blah, 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 right? There was always one team who was managing, owning that. And I think
Hmm.
that is where the conflict started coming in because they were pulling, they were transforming, they were presenting to the customer, serving to the customer. Now, if something goes wrong, business says it's not my operational application, I don't own. The time customer business don't own, data quality goes down. When data quality goes down, and as their business is not taking benefit from here because it's a reporting, people were not owning it. So tell us about that challenge which you feel before we go towards validated approach.
Yeah, that's not a new challenge. It's a challenge
Yeah.
we have had for many years, and we still haven't figured out how to solve it. And I think um, there are many ways that we have approached this. And if you look at data mesh, for example, that's also a way of trying to solve exactly that problem by putting data into that domain context, right? Um, but you can't bound data in the same way you can put code into a bounded context, right? So it doesn't really work. But it's a way of addressing exactly that problem. And I see this is the problem that is the reason why data governance fails. This is the problem that we need to address now more than ever. Um, and it's never been about negotiating data or ownership. It's about that failure of understanding how meaning evolves through an organization. Right? If you have three, five, 42 different definitions of a customer, it's not because there's one right and the others are wrong. It's because they all are wrong within their context of the meaning they're providing. And that's the tough part, right? Once you take the data out of their context and put them into a different context. So data governance is failing because that meaning that we had very much focused on one area is now produced and acted upon at a certain level of scale and also at a level of speed. And our data governance mechanisms were just not built to handle that. Um, we talked about data mesh. Yeah, that was trying to address that by breaking it down into domains. But it never really addressed the federated part.
I will come to that because I want to come from centralized. I want to go towards MASH, which is domain level. Then I want to come towards agentic AI, which is
Mhm.
very small data product, right? So
Yeah.
I want to throw one more challenge into centralized approach, right? From the operational point of view, the teams who were managing data governance, my personal experience was that those teams who were managing data governance were never data teams. That was very surprising, and I was always being fighting for that. You are doing data governance, so you need to know data. Because if you are not a data person, then you will govern data governance as standard governance. And standard governance is whatever is required, just do that. So do you see that challenge as well? Am I seeing this correct challenge? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that. I wanted just to contribute to your first thought that you had from the move from centralized to mesh to agentic. That's very true and very recognizable. Because the issues we were seeing with mesh, they are just accelerated now through the agentic ecosystem. Um, and and that also brings us to a certain point where you can't scale centralized governance models in the same way that you could before. Um, and that also means that you need to succeed with governance, you need the entire organization to be part of it. So you need people that don't have a data background to actually take responsibility for data, because otherwise you can't employ hundreds of data folks to do that. Um, there is a possibility here that I've written an article about that 2 years ago that measured and matured well about using AI as your data stewards. Um, because AI knows more about data than your business people,
Yeah.
and you can actually implement certain checkpoints through AI agents and use them as your data stewards, with the right guardrails and boundaries around them, and that's something that I'm discussing in the book as well, right? But yeah, there are possibilities, but with a classic governance model, if it's centralized or federated, it's still not scalable. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now from centralized, let's come towards Mash. Mash says everyone or all data products for a particular domain should be owned by domain owners. When I say domain owners, again, it's same. Like sales should have their own team. They manage their own complete autonomy of sales should be with salespeople. Marketing should have complete autonomy for marketing products. Let's say finance should have complete ownership of marketing products. But the challenge what I see is if marketing needs a sales data, then sales data, because they are the owner, they have to create the data product, but they are not getting benefit out of it. They don't care what happens underneath because marketing is taking the benefit. I think that's one of the biggest challenge in data mesh. And now governance when comes, they govern pattern to their own product, which is giving benefit dollar value to them, but they don't govern properly to the product which they have created for marketing. Do I see the same challenge and you see the same challenge, or am I on the wrong path?
no, I see the same challenges, and I would even add one to that, and that is a semantic inconsistency that we are seeing in data products. Right, you can create a product with your scope and your perspective, that's very much usable for your business unit, but beyond that, it's useless because you're switching context. So yeah, I've seen the same problems, and these problems are very much real, and that is for me the one of the reasons why we don't talk much about data mesh anymore. Um, there are certain elements in data mesh that have been there for years, right? Like the product thinking that very much scaled well. Product thinking, platform thinking, like the domain agnostic data platform. But if you look at the federated computational governance part in mesh, that's very thin and unpractical. So that's the part I was trying to focus on. By defining how do you do federation in the first place to navigate between alignment and autonomy. That's a tough one. And then the other thing is computational. And on the computational side, we have had so much development throughout the last years that make our life much more easy than they ever were. But they also then go back to that um, purpose crisis that we talked about in the beginning, that we are very much focused on how can we do things and what can we do instead of why are we doing it in the first place.
Yeah, so we understand the challenges of centralized, then data mesh. Now I want to spend more half an hour discussing agentic AI, right? Because yes, we can talk about mitigations for those two challenges, but I think we have passed those eras and we are now in an agentic AI era. So I think for my audience, our audience, we will focus more how to solve this agentic AI because that is what is coming and it is already here. And people are struggling like anything just because of our good friend generative AI, which failed miserably in last couple of years, and MIT and McKinsey all report says 85 to 95% generative AI project failed, right? It's a written report, it's a
Mhm.
service report. Now suddenly when agentic AI comes in, there's a big pause. Everybody want it, nobody want to start it. They are waiting. And the biggest challenge is data quality and then governance because people have learned that last time governance, as you correctly mentioned, that challenges were never solved, and we have moved to eras, right? And we have jumped into a agentic AI era where we are talking about small data products, and small data products need governance. If you don't do it, then AI regulatory policy. I think in Europe it's already there. America is working on it. Every now and then, those policies are changing, right? When policies and standards are changing, governance framework is not agile enough to cope up all those. I've seen requirement from businesses. They are saying, "Hey, I need one agent who should tell us how many policies are changing every day and implement those policies in my pipeline." That's what they're asking. I said it's not easy. Right? So, so now the question comes: if we need to have an agile framework
Mm.
of governance, our waterfall kind of governance was still had issues. How to cope up this challenge? It's
That's
a
that's a
difficult
good
one.
challenge. Yeah.
Let's
Um,
brainstorm. Yeah.
I have all the answers.
Okay, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We've seen the challenges and we've seen the issues we have had before, once we had these groundbreaking paradigm shifting situations that occurred. But so we're trying to do it better. But then there's also something about time and speed, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you have to balance that, right? How good your quality can be and at what speed you want to be in the market. And that's a challenging one, especially now when we talk so much about AI-ready data and the quality requirements you set up internally in an organization to just get your training data right, which is um, interesting, but at the same time, I don't think it's feasible to get all your data to that level that you would need. Um, so you have to find different ways of approaching it. And from a governance perspective, we are focusing very much on that input, right? But we should also focus on the output, right? What is the quality of the output of anything generated from our models? What about the model itself, right? How does it behave? What criteria should we set up for explainability, for example? And then the entire implementation environment. So there are so many other things that also play a role and affect the quality of anything you produce with AI, that are not about the input data. So input data is a small part of it. Yes, the part that seems tangible, at the same time it's really not, because we've tried the same thing with BI before and analysis. We never talked about BI ready data. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. But it's a lot of work, and I've been in some of these cleanup projects where you try to create a certain um, baseline of data quality, and I never seen one succeed fully. You get to a certain level, and then you say, well, it's good enough because we ran out of budget or time. Um, Right. So I think there's a lot of things in motion. What I have done deliberately is avoiding or resisting to discuss AI governance as something separate from data governance.
Okay.
Um, I think they should be very much aligned. We talked about data governance, corporate governance earlier, and the need for alignment there. I think AI governance, data governance is the same need for alignment, because if you don't align, if you do data governance in one unit and you do AI governance in a different
Yeah,
unit,
you cannot do
you're
that.
creating natural gaps,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Of course. Cannot be siloed.
Um, there will be silos, and silos are never sufficient for a complete setup of governance or compliance. So you have to align. Um, so if you have a good data governance structure in place in your organization, it makes sense to integrate AI governance into that.
Yeah.
If you don't, you can start building your AI governance because this is very much um, the most pressing matter right now for many organizations. But then also ensure that you are able to combine that with any data governance initiatives going forward. So I think they should be thought of together. And if you can do it at one, like data and AI governance, that makes a lot of sense. If you can't, you have to navigate it in a way that you can create that one common way of discussing governance in the organization.
Yeah, so let's touch base three items. Let me spell it out so we don't forget. One is data quality, importance of data quality, importance of
Mhm.
data architecture, and critical data elements. These three, let's touch base this then. I think let's start with the basic one, which is data quality. You just mentioned, right? You cannot achieve everything. Of course, you cannot. Tell our audience that what should be the criteria or success factors to say this much of data quality is enough for a certain product.
You get you get the consultant answer here. That depends. It depends very much on your business need. And you talked about critical data elements. Um, that's something you have to define beforehand, right? What is critical for you as an organization, and not just from a security perspective, but from a business value perspective.
Yes.
Um, and that's a tough thing to do, right? To create that definition and also gather and control that critical data. But that very much avoids that you are trying to boil the ocean, right? If you have an understanding of what your critical data is and then focus on that. So I
I
would
have
say
a
that's
funny
the starting
story.
point.
After that, I will tell you a funny story about the understanding of data critical elements. I will tell you. Yeah. Yeah, please continue.
Oh yeah. So yeah, critical data first, understanding of what is valuable for your organization, what do you need from a compliance purpose, from a market purpose, from a business purpose, um, and then start from there to build the right level of quality appropriate to your purpose around that. Um, and the thing is that fit for purpose, we talked a lot about that in
Yeah,
data
yeah,
quality for years. Um, there's something about fit is a measurement, right? But
yeah.
that means it should be measurable. If not, you can't say that it's fit. And,
Yes.
and the purpose is a requirement. And if you don't understand your requirements, you can't set a purpose. Um, so the thing is that to set your requirements, you need to negotiate your requirements between your different business units, between regulatory demands and business needs. And that work is what we talked about in the beginning of the data negotiation is very much the foundation you build up on.
Okay. So actually, you have brought a very good point here. I'm a solution architect, by the way, solution data architect. The whole idea of starting this podcast like 1.5 years was for my learning. I always say that. And then you have brought a very good point here is to, to measure a data quality or to start a journey on a data quality, first critical element should have been defined. Because when you're creating a data product, critical element should be prerequisite. And then you can go up to the level of whatever business accept. And you say, okay, we'll go because a human can be a customer and human can be an employee, human can be anything in an organization, right? Different context for different same data, different context, different
Mhm.
semantic, right? So you're absolutely right that critical elements. So well, you have already answered that importance of critical elements. Let's go towards data architecture because data architecture is something. Well, I've been in data industry for last 23 years and I've seen like only 20 to 30% people really understand what data architecture is. Some people only things spin up some services, create a pipeline in their data architecture. They don't focus on data modeling. They focus on data modeling, they only focus on logical data modeling and physical, which is just you create 3NF or data vault, whatever kind of data. They don't focus on Business data modeling. For me, data architecture is the coverage of everything. The data where it starts, when you serve, within that, everything is a data architecture. You include critical elements, as you mentioned, data quality, you mentioned lineage, data governance, services, BI reports, KPIs, OKRs. All those things have to mix together to be a data architecture. Now my question, last time we had centralized approach, we had big data warehouse. But when we are going into, I call data match data marts. I make it much easier. Those become data marts. When you call it data marts, data warehouse, data marts, okay, it's in the same side of the table. Now when we come towards agentic AI, this data architecture is becoming a problem because people want to create small data vaults, uh, yeah, data walls or focal or endpoint, whatever you want to create. They want small data models and they are struggling. Are you seeing this challenge that people are even saying you don't need data model? You don't need it, just fly on the fly, you do it and you consume it and you serve it and just drop it, have a log over there. So, what kind of challenges, what your suggestion on data architecture as far as agentic era is concerned?
I don't know where to begin with the challenges of it. But there's something interesting that has happened throughout the last years, and that is that a lot of vendors have built proprietary data models for their solution, and forced their customers into their way of seeing the world. SAP is a fantastic example for that. Right? Either if you buy SAP, you are obliged to use the SAP data model. If you wanted to change it to that, that's going to be a tricky one. Right? And then you create certain models that are very much proprietary to that solution. And either you scale it up to your entire organization, but no one does that. Or you're sitting with different models for each solution and you are manifesting your application-centric approach. That is a problem, and that's a problem that we are still seeing. Now, through AI, agentic AI, we see this moving, and in a good way, I think. We are seeing many of the large organizations forced to go away from that. Um, and I think that's a good thing. But that also requires organizations to take lead on that. And the thing that I think has been a problem in data modeling, if we take this first, is that we are thinking of data modeling as a way to describe a database. And it's not. It's a way to describe the business,
Yes.
right? So you see data models starting from a physical, um, and then trying to move upwards the scale rather than trying to move from the conceptual to the physical. Um, that is a problem. And the way we do conceptual modeling, if we do it at all, is still very much in a in a back room, not discussing the actual business issues. So there's a definite need to think differently and change. And then on the architectural side, I think we've over-architectured on a blueprint kind of thinking. And especially when I see enterprise architects trying to bring TOGAF into the discussion. Um, yeah, TOGAF is valuable. I agree with that. But you can't blueprint an organization on TOGAF. You have to go about architecture in an empirical sense, understand your business, understand your organization, and then build your design around that, rather than bring in an external design in. And that bringing the external blueprint in, way of thinking, that has also swept over to governance. And I've seen this over and over again that there are consultancies claiming that we have a data governance blueprint that we can implement in 3 weeks, or it doesn't make any sense,
No, they
because
they
you're not taking.
they implement
Yeah,
3 weeks. They take 6 months to customize actually.
exactly. And then it fails, and then you use 18 months to clean up.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, so yeah, you need to do governance tailored to your organization. That there is no blueprint to it. There are certain enduring responsibilities that you have to take. There are certain elements that make sense across industries, across organizations. Um, but when it comes to how you implement it and how you build your governance, you still have to look at the reality of your organization. And just one more thought on this, on culture.
Oh,
We talk about the culture, data culture as an important part. Um, but then we talk about change management, and often I see, especially from a governance implementation side, that you try to implement that blueprint or that best practice that the consultancy um, has said makes most sense, and you don't think about, does it actually fit with the culture I'm operating within? Because if you start to think of change management as changing the culture, you already failed. You have to adjust your implementation of governance to the culture you're operating within. You work in oil and gas. Just run a quick example. I don't know if you've noticed. I've been working in a lot of European operating companies, also American, where you see in every meeting room there is something on the wall that says, "These are our safety rules." Have you seen that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and health, safety, environment, they have worked deliberately and consistently for decades with clear, consistent measurements of safety, flagging issues, flagging deviations, and very much created a safety culture. Now, if you come into an oil and gas company that has a deliberate safety culture and try to implement an agentic AI system where you don't think about safety first, you already failed.
Yeah, true, true. Yeah, so in oil and gas, these are the things, yes, which you're referring to the HSE, right? So we move from data quality to data governance to critical elements and data architecture as well. Now let's go towards the impact on data governance on the delivery, because data governance, rather than smoothen things, you want to go from one place to another place, right? For me, data governance will give you a map, proper map, where you need to go. It smoothens things for you. You go faster from one location to another. But somehow, data governance, what they are doing right now, that after every 500 meters, they are putting a speed breaker. They are having uh, lights over there. They will have some policemen sitting over there. They, it has become a blocker, right? So you can still cope with it when it was centralized approach. But if same kind of approach, which is in first place is wrong, but yeah, that's what the practice is. But when you are going into a agentic world where customers or business expectation is to have a production ready product within 2 weeks. Yeah, and I'm not talking about the first one. First one will take framework creation, blah, 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 2, 3 weeks, 2, 3 months. But once that framework is ready based agentic AI framework I'm referring, then every next product should take not more than 2 to 3 weeks. Now, with that expectation and with that governance practice, that's a challenge. How do you see that?
Yeah, where do we want to start with this one?
It is a big
I
one,
think,
right? I see everywhere nowadays.
yeah, I think it makes sense to start with where we finished our last discussion on the culture side. It requires a mindset shift of
Mm.
governance. And yeah, that's easier said than done, and it does require a lot to make a mindset shift. I've identified like 7 shifts of mindset and try to also look at how do you implement them in an organization. Um, and it is complex. So you can't wait for the mindset to shift before you can do anything else. Um, if we do a quick mindset shift setting, then we can talk about the mindset from where we talk about centralized to federated. Yeah, that's part of it. But also going from descriptive governance, like policy design, to prescriptive, right? Going from a universal model of governance that you define for your organization to an adaptive model that takes care
Yeah.
of that autonomy and alignment across. Going from the excellence, right? We are a data governance office, we are the experts on data governance for the entire organization, to a more of an enablement role of data governance for the business to make better choices. And there's a lot more there that we need to look into. So yeah, that's something that you need to work on consistently throughout. And then there are a bit more of these practical steps that you need to take to move forward. And or if we're going to compare it to oil and gas, I think if you look at how preventive maintenance is done in organizations, um, moving away from, oh, I need a work order to do maintenance, to understanding signals, understanding where you need to act, maybe before even an issue occurs. And I think there are really good examples there for how we can set up data governance. A thing that I've talked about for years, and I never seen, well, I've seen it in one company happening. That's why I started talking about it. But governance sandboxes. We had regulatory sandboxes in Norway that were quite good, trying to see how does would the organization react to regulatory change before the change even happens. So you can measure, see certain issues beforehand. Why are we not doing that at scale in organizations? Trying to do governance sandboxes. How would a new policy affect our system without actually seeing the effect first? That's classic testing, right? It's
As you are
nothing.
referring to a digital twin, actually. Now, digital twins
Yeah,
are becoming very famous nowadays. And I'm advocating it everywhere that you need to have a digital twin in your organization, right?
yeah,
Especially with this agentic AI, right? We have a time check of 5 minutes. So let me throw last question to you. Era by initially, our first era was operational systems. Second era was analysis, where we used to look into historical, where data warehousing came in. Third era was analytics, where we talk about predictions, machine learning, data science, XYZ. Now, current era for me is become a decision. So you come from operational, run your business, analysis, look into history, analytics based on the history, predict, forecast, insights. Now become a decision. Now, every data products, we start our journey discussion with the management. Hey, what decision you are making? How we can make that decision uh, fast, more accurate, more transparent. So I think let's close our discussion on this decision versus and the importance of governance correlation of both.
yeah. I think there has been a lot of talk about that, and I do agree with that. That we need to move away from governing data for the purpose of governing data. That's not the point, right? The point is to be able to make better decisions in an organization.
Yeah.
That's the entire point of corporate governance as well, right? To make better, more informed, deliberate choices. So yeah, it's the same thing. It is about decision. I wouldn't call it decision governance because it doesn't make any sense. It's still data governance or data and AI governance, if you like. But decisions are the focus point. And
Yeah.
to make that, you need to widen your approach. You need to widen your approach in the sense of governance as one, as we talked about, right? Trying to ensure that you're not working in silos, that you're not creating gaps between different governance elements, but also widen it to machines, right? Interactions between humans and machines, between machines and humans, between machines and machines,
Yeah.
um, right? So there's a lot of new challenges coming towards governance that we need to tackle, and I think we are in a good way there. I think governance is still more than relevant, but we need to change the way we're doing it. We can't do governance as we did 20 years ago.
Of course, now for me, this year is about data governance and the foundation because people were really confused because of generative AI failure. Now, management are all, by the way, I already know three RFPs, one in Malaysia, Saudi Arab, and Pakistan. They had, sorry, they had an RFP on governance framework. People want data governance. Again, you have a time check. Again,
Yeah,
it was a great session actually. We really discussed why we need a governance and we went from multiple eras, centralized to federated to agentic AI. We moved from data architecture. We covered most of the part. And thanks again. I hope you liked this discussion. What's your feedback?
yeah. Thank you. It was fantastic. I really liked it, and I think that we are at an agreement here. Data governance needs to change, not because of a lack of tools, but because we need clarity on why we're doing it in the first place, and move from there. So very good discussion, very good conversation. Thank you so much.
No, thanks for taking our time. Hopefully, we can repeat this in a year's time. Normally, I book my guest 1 year from time we
Yeah,
do.
that would be fun. Yeah,
See
definitely.
what happened in 12 months. Again, thank you so much. Have a good day, rest of the day. Sorry you missed your lunch. Go and have some lunch.
No worries.
Take care, have
Thank
fun.
you.
Cheers. Bye
Bye.
bye.